gonna see if they have the specific thing. Okay. Streaming events, new live stream, select quick, give your stream a title, go live now, use Hangouts. Okay, yeah, that's what we did.
Oh,
Uh,
oh, oh my God.
what?
So I just turned
What?
on the OSB, right? And then I went into live stream on YouTube, and
Oh.
it's green. It says live.
Well, yeah, but it's only showing you.
It's not showing anything. The screen is blank.
So, yeah,
But
and when I do the same thing, it shows me. And it is not showing the two of us having a conversation.
also, I didn't even set up an
This is
event.
absurd.
I didn't even set up an event though. I just clicked live streaming.
Yeah,
So
yeah. If you do that, OBS does it automatically. Uh, but really, like Google Hangouts should be working. What the hell is this garbage?
holy shit! And it says two people are watching. Hey, we apologize, people. We have no idea what we're doing.
This should be working. I don't get it. This is all right. I'm gonna see if Google Plus can help me out. Come on. This is some idiocy right here.
Yeah, I had it in my head that we wouldn't go live until we had it all figured out, and it turns out we've been accidentally going live for
No.
off and on for a couple hours.
Yeah, look, I can get just myself to stream. You can get yourself on your own to stream.
Well,
And for some reason, we can't get.
we don't know. Like I was streaming, the only thing I heard was my voice, but I didn't listen long enough to know if it was picking up your voice as well. There was no video at all, but it was picking up my voice, so it may have been picking up yours as well, and we just didn't know.
I don't think so, because if it had been, it would have enabled us to have the option to go live, and I'm not even seeing the option for that, which is inexplicable to me. I don't know why.
Now, in these OBS systems, does it make sense to have the input be our camera, or shouldn't it be Google Hangouts in some sense, so that it's just taking an image from Google Hangouts and not from our cameras?
Well, but it's our cameras that are recording us. I mean, look, what are the options that we have? We have image slideshow, video capture device, audio input capture, yada yada. It should be the video capture.
What about media
it's our
source?
cameras that are recording.
Media source.
Oh, let's see. Well,
No.
where is that?
I don't see. No, that doesn't look like promising. Okay.
Let's see.
3 people watching the blank screen, possibly listening. If you are watching and you want to make a comment, say if you can hear Ivan talk or if you can only hear me talk. Oh. Oh, wait.
What?
No, I can see the chats. Fuck. I think I came too late. Damn it. Nah, I think we hear both of you speaking. They can hear both of us.
Oh, yes. Okay.
But there's just no video.
Yes.
There's just no video.
All right. Well, that's completely stupid. All right.
But that's good enough, right? They don't need to hear us. They've seen our faces before. And then we can,
Yeah.
What the fuck, though?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. We're stupid. Or this computer program is stupid.
No, it should be streaming the video live. I don't understand why it isn't. It's completely ridiculous that it's not. It should be.
Well, it's the content of our discussion that matters more than our faces, right?
Right, but it's still going to annoy me because...
Yeah, I know. We'll figure it out next time. Oh, I got to Skype.
All right, hold on a minute. You said you're looking at the comments. Where are you?
So
on whose channel?
I'm on my channel, and I'm in the...
You are on...
Yep, and I'm in the welcome back, length universe, and it's the live stream. I didn't even set up an event, so this thing probably just says live
Okay, so,
streaming. And
okay, so you have OBS open.
yeah, I do, but it's not showing any video. I don't see any video anywhere. But
Okay,
there's comments on the side, and people are commenting about how, well, that they missed
how
it
they
and
can hear
whatever.
both
But
of
I said
how.
someone posted, "Heck, we can hear both of you." Uh, Two people have
Uh,
said that, so they can definitely hear us both, and there's no audio.
all right, well that's still very strange because something is going on with regard to the video thing. I mean, you're saying that on your own channel, OBS doesn't even. Uh,
No, on my not even my channel on my computer. OBS is a blank screen. Uh,
okay, and you froze. I just missed what you said. Not even my channel, and then you went out. What
uh,
did you say?
OBS is a blank screen. It shows that it's getting audio information, and in the sources, I have it selected to my cameras, but it just is showing nothing. Wait,
There's
oh
some
no! It
what?
says I can see him. Oh, he's completely naked. That's a joke because I'm wearing clothes. Yeah, there's also the sauce says how is this different from any other video? So he's right. I think we should just go and talk about what we were going to talk about, and
Yeah,
be
all right, but
frustrated.
it's
Yeah.
it's still it's bothering the
Yeah,
shit
well,
out of
just
me. I
get
mean, why
over it.
is
You know,
it?
you get bothered by lots of things in life, and this is hardly one of the biggest ones. So, hello everyone.
Since this is being so laggy, I'm just gonna turn off my video.
Yeah, go ahead. Might as
All right.
well. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so apologize to anyone who watches this in the future that there's 7 minutes of us not realizing that we're on. We're on now, and
We couldn't get the
we
video to work.
we did a video
Yeah.
the Friday before the election, just a few days before, and I thought it'd be cool to do kind of a looking at our reaction to it, the reaction of other people's to it, uh, and just I don't know. It was quite an interesting election. I don't know that in my lifetime I've had one that was this surprising. Um, we're now, gosh, almost 20 days past the election, 21 days, 3 weeks past. I was out working in Wyoming, so I wasn't able to make videos in that time. But it's actually good that it gives us a chance to kind of see how people have reacted. So I have Ivan back. You can't see him, but I'm sure you all remember what he looks like from the last video. So, how about you? What do you think? This was a pretty surprising election, or pretty much what you expected?
Somewhat. I did bet money on Trump winning though, just because I felt like doing that, and I made a lot of money, so that's great.
Yeah.
Didn't exactly expect that to happen, but it
You
did,
now
and that's a.
in our last video you should have disclosed that. Now we know that you were biased and trying to make financial gain out of the election.
Yeah, that's true. I have such enormous pull, with my 300 something
Well,
subscribers.
we joke, but in New Hampshire, the margin of victory was only a couple hundred. Now, I think it was less than my subscriber counts. Granted, though, only a tiny, tiny number of my subscribers live in New Hampshire, and even the ones who do probably don't listen to me or you. But uh,
Well, then I guess that shows that all of those with fake ideas who go vote don't necessarily all vote Democrat.
the margin though was quite slim in several states. I mean, the overall electoral victory was quite strong. I would say I wouldn't say it was a landslide, but it was it
It was
wasn't really
getting
that
there.
close. Yeah, it was getting there, and I noticed that for several weeks after, several states were just never called. Michigan and New Hampshire come to mind, even though they knew that Trump had won those states. I think a lot of outlets were just didn't want to make the map any more red or blue.
I
Wait,
think they
yeah,
official. I
what?
think they officially called Michigan yesterday.
Okay, uh,
I
and I think New Hampshire went Clinton, but they were just keeping it blank for a long time. Um, so I think we both, in our neither of us predicted a Trump victory. We both thought that she was more likely to win, but that he had a chance, and it turns out that he had a very good chance apparently. Um, for those of you who didn't overhear our casual conversation in the other videos that we didn't think were recording, uh, actually went to Trump had a rally in Manchester at 9 p.m. the day before the election, uh, that I got a chance to go to. my first presidential rally, and obviously the stuff that they talk about is pretty, vapid, and there's not a lot of content there. But he talked about how he was going to win North Carolina and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan, and I was with my libertarian buddy and just thinking like, there's just no way. All the polls say that there's no chance of this, and although I understood the possibility that the polls could be wrong or that there could be either deliberate, you know, fixing with it or just systematic bias that's unintentional, I didn't think that they could be that far off. And lo and behold, he ended up winning all those states the next day.
There were a few people just on YouTube who had made a few cogent criticisms of the polls and the polling models that were being used. So Styx Hexenhammer, I don't know if you know who he is,
I
but
do not.
the guy, he's got a pretty big following at this point. I think he's something at like 70,000 subscribers. But he's been making videos about Trump and the election throughout the entire season, and he's been betting on a Trump victory since about day one. And one of the things he said was that the polling models that extrapolate the samples that people gather to create polls are assuming that the election will be more or less similar to the 2012 election. And he emphasizes that he thought that assumption was incorrect and that this was a paradigm shift election and that one couldn't necessarily extrapolate from the sort of demographic divisions and so forth that one saw in 2012 to 2016. Yeah, and that's one reason why all the models turned out to be wrong. There's also other stuff about oversampling women, oversampling Democrats, and so on that a lot of other people had talked about, and it really depended on the poll.
Yeah,
But
in my
oh,
lifetime, there's never been an election that was so that was predicted so strongly one direction and then turned out to be wrong. I don't think that there were any where the consensus going in was that it was a toss-up. They were all, Clinton's going to win. I'm talking in history. Like Clinton will win, or Bush will win. Bush and Gore is probably the one exception. And the only thing I can think of is back when Truman defeated, what was it, Dewey, and a lot of the newspapers
yeah,
polled Republicans and thought, I think it was Dewey, but thought he would win. And so a lot of newspaper headlines said, you know, Truman loses or Dewey wins, and it turned out that Truman had won.
yeah, yeah.
But
And
it's hard
there's a
to
picture.
imagine that happening
Yeah.
now, with the technology that they have. But apparently, it's possible.
Yeah, another thing is the polls that most people were paying attention to were the national polls, and I was watching a lot of people like, Ryan Falk and Sean Last Spark Talk over at the Alternative Hypothesis. They were saying all sorts of things about the polls being skewed by oversampling Democrats and women and so forth, and even after their corrections, they had projected Hillary being ahead by about 2 or 3 points, I believe. And Hillary, in fact, won the popular vote. And so, in that sense, after their unskewing, they were more or less accurate. But the system that we have in the United States doesn't base the winner of the election on the popular vote. So you would have to actually break it down and look at individual state polls. And people were focusing on national polls. So that probably also gave them a wrong impression.
Right. Yeah, because the heavy
Uh,
population centers are skewed against in the
yeah.
electoral college. You have all the North Dakotas and the Wyomings and all that. And yeah, I could totally see that. You do a national average, you factor in California, and you just think, oh, they're going to win everywhere. Where no, they've got to get a majority in these particular states. And I mean, in my lifetime, he took Michigan. The last time Michigan
Yeah.
went for a
Yeah.
Republican was for Ronald Reagan in 1984 against
I think he
Mondale.
Yeah,
And
I think that was like the greatest landslide
yes,
ever.
Mondale
Yeah.
got one state that year. Um, and and I was one when that happened. My entire life since then, Michigan's always been considered a swing state, but it's in presidential elections, it's gone for the Democrat every single time. And I was flabbergasted. Pennsylvania, you think about Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and yeah, there's a big area between there that's red, but there's not hardly any big cities or anything, and yet that's what happened. The same in Ohio, same in North Carolina, and um, one thing that frustrates me as I was watching Alex Jones talk about it, he said, "Well, I think that there was massive election fraud and that Hillary should have lost 5 other states. And I was like, I wish you would list what those 5 were so that we could, look into that and see if,
Yeah, Alex Jones has been saying that. Yeah,
um, I could only go off of the ones that were close, and that would be like Minnesota, New Hampshire, Virginia, uh, Nevada, maybe 1 or 2 others. I mean, there's no way that they cheated and she won California, or New York. Those
yeah.
states would have gone. So the one frustrating thing about him when he makes claims like that, he almost never cites his source, and a lot of the stuff he says is bullshit, and a lot of it's not. And I just wished, um,
Well, that's kind of what Trump does. Is he comes out and he makes an outrageous statement that's exaggerated greatly, and then he begins gradually scaling it back. But the initial exaggerated statement gets him attention, and he sort of works with that. Yeah, that's
and
kind of been yeah.
in fact, just today I was hearing that his statements about the American flag are calculated to make people start burning American flags, so he can then say, "Hey, look, my enemies are unpatriotic." It's not even a serious attempt to ban it. It's I want my opponents to cast themselves in the most negative light possible. So I'm going to dare them basically to burn American flags. And if that's true, if that's really his thinking, then I don't know that we've had a president who is that, um, what's the Machiavellian in their plotting, which to me is bad. Like that's not good unless he's going to use that for ends that I approve of, which I think are, by and large, not that likely, but who knows?
Well,
Um,
it may be true. I'm willing to lend credence to claims of him being that Machiavellian just because he fooled everyone,
yeah,
just about,
he's he's clearly intelligent, and that's for all the things that you could say about him that are true and criticize him for, the idea that he's an idiot, I just I think that's ridiculous to think that. And you could say, well, look
Yeah.
at these ridiculous things that he said. I'm like, he's on a stage, he's pandering to the crowd. Uh, the fact that he says something that's stupid doesn't mean he's stupid. It means he thinks that that's going to gain him something.
And
Um,
he's usually right.
yeah, he surprised a lot of people, including me. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think let's talk about the one thing I think we both savored about this was the huge amount of crocodile tears and butthurt on the part of the left. Oh my goodness, totally
Oh
unprecedented,
yeah.
completely
Yeah.
unprecedented.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun making a video about that, just sort of laughing at them. And it's funny because the view count is like ridiculously higher than all the views from my other videos. So, and a lot of people seem to have found it funny. Yeah, that was just kind of me having my moment and drinking a few buckets of their tears and enjoying myself, which I'm sure a lot of other people did.
Yeah, myself
Uh,
included.
yeah, Trump Salt Mining Inc. is open for business. So it's great.
It it really hit. I'm I'm learning not to get stressed out about things I can't really control, and so as much as I really hated Hillary, and have for most of my life, I realized that my effect on the election is going to be close to zero. Uh, and that day, I just, had a good day, and started watching the results. And I think it was maybe around 9 where they showed a live feed. And I'm repeating this. Ivan, you've heard me say this, and everyone else probably heard me in the other videos, but I'll repeat it again in case. Um, that they showed her audience and they were in tears, and at some point the New York Times came out and they said the odds now are 95% that Trump will win.
Yeah.
And I
I
was like, holy crap, like where does this, when he had said at the rally, when he said he would win those states, I was like, that's pure braggadocio. And he
but he
was
did
right.
win them.
He was right. He didn't claim to win a single state other than New Hampshire where he was speaking, that he didn't win. And in New Hampshire, it was razor close. Um, Interestingly enough, too, he had a falling out with the incumbent Republican senator in New Hampshire, Kelly Ayotte, and she basically said, "I'm not going to support him, and he's a bad person." Blah blah blah. So he had this enormous rally in Manchester, and he never mentions her once. And the next day, she lost by like 900 votes, and there were 17,000 people at that rally. So if he had even said, "Hey, Kelly Ayotte also is great. We need her to be the next," she probably would have won and been reelected.
Yeah.
And it was interesting too to see and I've heard people predict this, that if he was to win, the Republican establishment would line up to lick his boots, and that has definitely happened. You see him meeting Paul Ryan and all these.
Absolutely. The neocons are swarming him like locusts. Ted Cruz has, of course, bowed down and pledged fealty to the God Emperor.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well, we know that where these people are not principled, and that it was easy to criticize him when they were all banking on him being yesterday's news on November 9th. And now that he's the head of the party and the president elect, and he's popular enough with their constituency that I mean, someone like Paul Ryan, like, did Trump won Wisconsin of all places, fucking Wisconsin,
yeah.
and he can't just not get behind him now. And I'm hopeful that of all the promises he's made that are good, at least one or two of them he might be able to act upon. We'll see, but I feel like his concession speech was a classic complete change in rhetoric. From Hillary going, she should be in prison, to, I respect her, she's done great things for this country. And I can understand why he would say that for political reasons, but on the other hand, I'm like, that's complete repudiation of everything you said in the campaign, which I guess I shouldn't be surprised by a politician doing that, but
Yeah. I mean, there is one way of looking at this, which is to say that it's just boilerplate and it's just the sort of thing that everyone says. And Michael Malice, in a column he wrote, specifically said that we shouldn't worry too much about Trump being conciliatory in his victory speech because Margaret Thatcher did the same thing, and she didn't exactly govern in a conciliatory manner. So this may just be a way of sort of lulling those whom you intend to purge into a false sense of security. But then, on the other hand, he doesn't seem willing anymore to pursue criminal charges against Hillary. Now, what I've heard some people suggest is that he's just not going to go after her on the emails, and instead he's just going to have the FBI come after her with regard to the Clinton Foundation, get her on something relating to that, and then just use that as the pretext to charge her with everything.
Something different. And also, I agree with the lull into power kind of, hey, I'll be conciliatory, I'm the president of the whole country now, and get established. Because for a few months, for 2 months now, he isn't the president. Even though it is one of those weird situations where he de facto kind of is. Like he's going to be him or Pence. And people, I mean, obviously, I think that she should go to prison and she deserves it. I think that would be a great precedent to set. Look, you can do bad things, and even if you're powerful, this can happen. But I almost think this is a litmus test. If he doesn't do it, I mean,
well, they're also the Hillary zombies to consider. I mean, you have now, in the wake of Trump's victory, George Soros paid thugs who are starting riots and setting fires and holding up signs that say "Rape Melania," just because Trump won. And I would imagine that the reaction from them would become even more extreme if he should decide to really bring down the hammer on Hillary. But then again, these people
would be further marginalizing themselves.
Right.
I mean, that reaction, that attitude is what probably made him popular. That's probably what's pushed him over the threshold of victory. And
it either made him super popular with one segment of the population, or some ungodly combination of Hitler and the devil with another half. And it has led to this really obvious, really stark kind of division and fracturing that we see in the country, where two people on opposite sides of the political spectrum now have views that are so diametrically opposed to each other. it's surprising that they even inhabit the same country.
It's
You know?
more. I'd say it's even more that they just are diametrically opposed to each other, and not that their views, I think, overlap a ton. The consensus that people agree on, from at least a libertarian point of view, is overwhelming.
Yeah, the,
But
the the unthinking sort of part of it, yeah.
right, but the absolute contempt that they have for each other is getting worse and worse and worse, and to the point of that they would favor vindictive legislation against each other, uh, or anything vindictive against each other, and that's a new thing. Let's see. I was gonna say, Bill Maher had an interesting point. He's like, part of the problem is for years now, everyone that the left disagreed with, we called the next Hitler. Oh, Mitt Romney's the next Hitler. John McCain's the next Hitler. And he's like, we basically cried wolf. We've been saying this all the time, and then when somebody that we really don't like shows up, um, no one believes us. And I think and
Yeah.
Sam Harris, who said something very similar. We have all these leftists who are going crazy about Harambe, who are going crazy about costumes at Halloween parties, and who are getting triggered by everything. And when someone is that unbalanced, and then they say, well, Trump is a fascist, a normal person is going to be like, look, you don't know the difference between, your moral compass is completely out of whack, you're totally crazy. And so if you say that Trump is a fascist and blah blah blah, you know what, you've lost the respect to have an opinion on stuff like that. And Harris said, look, this is just a big fuck you to all those people, which is
Yeah,
what Michael Moore said. These Rust Belt blue collar workers in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan are like, fuck you. Like, maybe Trump
yeah.
is terrible, but I hate you enough that I'm going to vote for him anyway.
Just because you hate him, yeah.
Yeah, you're the endorsement. Your vitriol.
And,
Uh,
and the amazing thing is the people in the media, the suffering classes, that kind of isolated elite who don't really care about those people in the Rust Belt, who kind of sneer at them as these kind of stupid hinds, they don't realize this. They don't understand that every time that they excoriate Trump, it makes him look better and better in the eyes of a significant segment of the population.
and
They,
this is an interesting thing that I noticed after the election. You had those on the left who doubled down and who were, okay, so the country really is as racist as I thought, or more. It's more racist than I thought. And several of my friends, and I still retain left wing friends, were, holy crap, I don't want to. I don't want to live here anymore. And I had at least one who officially posted, I'm leaving. I know where I'm going to go. I'm moving to France, and this is a long time in coming, but this is the last straw. I cannot. It's not just Trump. It's the fact that I live around people who voted for him, and those people are basically Klans members. And so you have on that the doubling down, but then you also have an element that's like, gosh, are we that disconnected that we didn't see this coming? That we don't understand why people, and I don't remember the name. You've probably read it though. Some news paperman wrote an article just saying we're just so smug and in our bubble that we don't understand people anymore.
it
And
was on Vox, I think.
yeah, he
Yeah.
got interviewed a couple times, and it was definitely making the rounds. And he was like, "Are we this disconnected from reality?" You know, and whether
I,
you agree with Trump getting elected or not, if you can't imagine why people would vote for him, then you are disconnected from reality.
yeah.
You know,
Now, I think that the latter group of those two, the more reflective group, it seems to me at least that they're in the minority.
I would definitely agree. And the entire zeitgeist of the left totally rejects introspection like that.
Yeah.
The emotional identity politics and victim baiting that defines how they work has no has does not have any room for that kind of
Yeah. The
self
the
critique.
kind the kind of moralistic narcissism that they're so bursting with wouldn't be able to survive any kind of honest self-analysis, and so they just can't do that.
And the other thing I think we're seeing is the the envelopment of the leftist movement and the Democratic Party into identity politics to the
Yes.
exclusion of the traditional like workers, blue collar factories unions, and
Yeah.
and that's come back to bite them, I think, and again, Michael Moore was very cogent on this. So was Sam Harris. A lot of people are noticing this, and I'm from the Midwest, and I work a lot in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan, and those are all places that I've been in many, many times. You know, these these people don't, and I've also been to DC, and I know the Beltway elites and the New York elites, and they're completely different species. And the fact that they're both
Yes.
in the Democratic Party, it's not surprising that they would split at some point. At least in enough, it'd be wrong to say all union members in Pennsylvania voted for Trump. That's not true. But enough of them are splitting away that it's the the Democratic calculations that have worked for 40 years or more that they didn't work
Yeah.
this election. Now, time will tell if it will continue to be that way in the future. But the Democrats aren't talking to union people saying this is jobs, jobs, jobs. They're saying identity, identity, identity.
Yes. Uh, I don't remember who it was that said it, but so I heard something that I thought was very insightful. It said that the Republican Party is a group of ideological factions held together by interest groups, and the Democratic Party is a group of interest groups held together by an ideological faction. And in the case of the Democrats, the interest groups are just various racial groups
Right.
at this point, non-whites. I mean, you could just look at what the Democrats have been doing recently. Bernie Sanders, press secretary, this just absolutely vile black woman whose name I am blessedly happy not to be able to recall, because she appeared once on CNN where someone was trying to make the point to her to say, look, the Democrats and the left generally have been ramping up all of this anti-white rhetoric, and it's alienated white voters, and this is why they're going to support Trump. And she completely ignored the point and was just sort of like, oh, boo-hoo, you poor white people. Yeah, what, as if to say, why should I feel sorry for
Yeah,
you?
people were pointing
Um,
out, like, look, Hillary Clinton called people who support Trump deplorable. It's like, well, what do you think? People, they're not going to vote for you then. And on the left, though, you have this thing where it's okay to bash white people and white shame. And leftists who are white, who really buy into that, they feel like that's almost a penance that they morally should take. But most people don't feel that way. And so while you might be able to go to a college campus and tell every white person there that they're guilty of slavery, that they're as guilty
yeah,
as a person, with a whip or a Klans person, and tell them that they're a horrible person, and they'll be like, yeah, I agree. Your average person will not react that way. And if you come and basically tell them that, or act that way, or have rhetoric that suggests that, they're going to see you as an enemy, as they should.
right. Well, I have SJWs in my own family, sadly. Not just sort of regular left wingers. I'm talking full blown, SJWs, swallowed all the Kool Aid, all the way, the whole thing. And the reaction from them, and I have to sort of pretend to be a normie around them because I don't want to alienate them because I want to keep in touch with them for certain reasons. Basically, I want to remain aware that the left is still there and not go into a bubble myself.
Right.
But the point is, like, their reaction to Trump's victory was just like, it was literally, oh, a bunch of racists voted for a sexual predator because they hated Hillary because she was a woman. I mean, that's really what it was.
Yeah.
And yeah, and they're all sort of uneducated imbeciles who don't know anything, and yeah, just evil one was their view.
And the fact that the only way that he won was because millions of people who voted for Barack Obama twice voted to him.
Yeah,
And those people are all racist. And I got I mean, I'm thinking in particular of some of my friends in DC who would post articles to the effect of the only reason anyone doesn't like Hillary is because she's a woman. Like no, you could say no policy, nothing. It's because she's a woman. And I'm like, you find that persuasive, but nobody else does. You
yeah. I
know,
mean, even Bernie Sanders said so, where he's like, listen, to just go out there and say, hey, I'm a woman, vote for me, that's not good enough. That's not a policy platform. Yeah, but that seems to me to be what the left is becoming. It's just completely focused around identity politics, specifically racial identity politics, and everyone is allowed to have their own interest group except for whites. And so if whites are excluded from that fold, where do you think they're going to flock to? They're,
They even have a hierarchy there, and there you are liable if you're in that fold to lose your position, and that's happening with gays, for instance. There's like there if we look like the rhetoric clearly supports Muslims over gays to the point of when Islamic terrorists murder gay people, that's okay. That's a gun violence thing. That's not a Muslim thing. And so you see, and so I think Trump got like 20% of the homosexual vote, uh, and I think those are the ones who are going, look, what's the point in being the DNC? Yeah, they say they support us, but they have no policies that are even remotely. They just pander, but they won't do anything, and it's similar with the unions. They just expect the unions to support them without bringing them anything. Now, you and I would probably disagree with the things that they bring the unions that they're good things, but
right.
like that they just kind of assume, hey, these people are going to vote for us. They're automatically in our pocket, and so if we want to deride them, or not give them anything, or ignore them, how many times did she visit those states? None. That's fine. They're going to always be in our pocket, and they're like, no, we're not. You know, uh,
Yeah, and there's also the fact that the coalition of interest groups that the Democratic Party is holding together is so diverse that in many cases they're mutually antagonistic. And
right.
so if you pander to one group too much, you're going to piss off somebody else. So you have to strike this kind of delicate balance where you don't pander too much to anyone and you don't give too many people too much of what they want. And in effect, what that might wind up doing is it'll piss off everyone. Uh,
Yeah, that's the classic Clinton, where not attacking anyone, not always giving a political non-answer, always pandering to wherever. Oh, if you're in California, you say you're for solar. You're in Pennsylvania, you say you're for coal, as if there isn't YouTube and those people can't see. Joe Rogan made the observation, like, I think some people, who grew up in older times just don't realize viscerally that everything they say gets recorded and people will see it. Whereas you juxtapose that with someone like Trump, who will just say stuff that's not politically correct, that even if it's wrong, at least has a definite, stance. And that's just infinitely
yeah.
refreshing in comparison. At least based on what he says anyway, where he stands. Now, I don't necessarily believe that what he says is where he stands or whatever, but he makes declarative statements, you know, uh, and it would be wrong to say Hillary Clinton never does, but they're of a very political nature. They're calculated, scripted, in such a way that it's transparently disingenuous. Um, and the emails didn't help that too, because it proves that she's Janus faced.
Right. Well, just look at their campaign slogans. Hillary's is stronger together. What does that mean? That sounds so robotic and bloodless and focus group tested. Now, Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," you could also say is pretty vacuous. But if you put it into the context of what he did during his campaign rallies and his speeches and so on, you at least get that he has some kind of semi-coherent program. There's
Yeah,
something that he wants to do.
the
Whereas
policy,
with Hillary, it's just you know, yeah. Whereas with
right, right.
Hillary, it's just my vagina. Trump's a racist.
Yeah,
And that's really all it is.
you and I might not agree with his policies, but at least they nominally make sense with his motto. Whereas hers, yeah, what is she proposing to make us stronger together? She's going to what? Let Obamacare fail, overthrow Assad. Like, how does any of that make
Yeah.
us stronger? She's basically just saying he's and
Bring more little kids into DC. Like what? it's,
uh,
it's,
I mean, and also, as much as she was running a negative campaign against her, she was basically, I'm qualified and he's terrible. And that was one thing, a lot of people that I listened to were just like, she's more qualified, so it doesn't even matter what their policy positions are or anything about their character. The fact that her resume is better automatically means that she should be president. And I just was like, but that assumes that her what she did in her positions were laudatory to the point that she should be
Yeah,
considered for higher office. And I'm like, how is that possible?
yeah.
Her record
To
said,
me, she seems.
yeah, her record is an
Yeah,
indictment.
to me, she seems like a more experienced liar, and I'm sure who had that reaction. Trump summed it up. She has experience, but it's bad experience.
Right.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people felt the same way.
Yeah. Oh, what's her claim to fame? Oh, she was Secretary of State. What's her big achievement? Oh, Libya. That was a great achievement, Uh,
Yeah.
her time as senator. What did she get passed? I don't think she had anything that was her signature like a legislation. And she's got hanging around her neck the fact that she voted for the Iraq War and gave speeches about how gay marriage should not be legal explicitly. Like, so her record is bad and or demonstrates her hypocrisy, but for her supporters that was irrelevant. Well, she was just in the position. It's a classic case of failing up. As long as you were in the position, how you performed or what you did and the consequences of that are irrelevant. So I think that we do have this introspective left, but it's a minority. And I'm kind of curious what those people are going to do when they realize that most of the people who are running their party and most of the activists in their party, and I think that's another important thing, all the activists on the Democratic side are the most radical SJWs.
Right.
Whereas on the Republicans, you have lots of activists who are just kind of like Tea Party people. They're not the Klans people. They're not the most,
Yeah.
they're regular people, and I think that's
Yeah.
a big
Yeah.
difference too. How,
Yeah,
like,
I mean, with these more introspective leftists, I think what's basically going to happen is their numbers are going to shrink because they're either going to wind up going to the right de facto,
yeah,
or they're going to suck it up and join the left. Probably more of them will go to the right, at least if they stay where they are. And as the left gets more extreme, that will be pretty much their only choice. I mean, it's either that or wind up kind of atomized and get swamped because you have nothing to attach yourself to
if you look at
politically.
I forget his name, but he's a popular YouTube interviewer. He's gay. I can't remember his name, but he describes himself as leftist. But he's like, look, we can't. Or Jonathan Haidt is a really good example. Haidt considers himself on the left, a man of the left, and he wrote an article a few months ago about how he had given a speech at a high school in California, and this is like a left wing private high school,
Mm-hmm.
not a public school but a private school. And all the kids there, they have left wing parents, and all the curriculum is left wing and all that. And he gave a speech about how free speech was a good idea. And he finished, and the very first question was, "Why do you support rape?" And he said it, and what he goes, what followed was 40 minutes of the harshest grilling he's ever received. And every question was, why do you support the rape of women? And he would say, I don't support that. I'm just saying, people's free speech. You shouldn't go to prison if you say it. And they're like, that's rape enabling. That's rape. And so he wrote an article. He's like, these people cannot have a discussion with anyone. They can't,
Right, exactly.
and they're going to alienate themselves from everybody, and
Yes,
that's coming
because
true.
yeah, and because you have this combination on the one hand, first of this kind of shrill emotionalism, where words are equivalent to rape, apparently, but that's combined with this sort of sanctimonious attitude that they're absolutely correct, that all those who are opposed to them are like these demonic forces that really should never be made peace with, and all this kind of stuff. So you have extreme moralism on the one hand and extreme confidence in their own correctness, and that's mixed with just emotionalism and unwillingness to even acknowledge rational argument in some cases. The
Now,
more
now,
extreme,
now, Ivan, have you ever talked to a Christian fundamentalist?
uh,
Because
yeah,
what are
yeah,
you
yeah.
describing? What are you describing? You know,
Well. That is what they are, in my opinion, because
yeah,
I think that strain of thinking pretty much is derived from kind of like Massachusetts Puritans from the 17th century, like Yankee sort of puritanical Protestants that were absolutely sure that they were right
and believed themselves to be on a holy mission to stamp out sin wherever they found it. All that's happened is that they threw out Jesus, and it's become secularized. But it's the same garbage. And,
if anything, it's even more anti-intellectual, because at the very least, with a Christian fundamentalist, you could get into the intricacies of the biblical text and have arguments about, well, what does this say and what does that say? They don't have a text like that. They don't have, I mean, obviously there's left-wing books and stuff, but there isn't a Bible equivalent, and they don't. So it's all just rhetoric, and
it's all muffiels, I mean, I've had SJWs say to me whenever I make even the mildest criticisms of them that I am, simply by virtue of the act of launching criticisms at them, that I'm undermining their feelings and their descriptions of their experiences. So for them, it's like emotions. I mean, people have said this, but it's like emotions trump fact, that there is no idea of objective reason. They don't seem to believe in that. It's all kind of subjective relations of experience. There is no objective reason in their minds.
And that has two consequences. It kills any kind of intellectual development at all, and it alienates everybody who doesn't buy into that.
Right.
And that's what's happening.
And the scary thing is, as people do get alienated from them and become stronger in their opposition to them, these people are so entrapped by their own ideology that they interpret that fact as confirmation that they're right.
Right. The fact that Trump won is an indication of how strong the racism and bigotry in the United States is. It's only the small minority that are saying maybe we got something wrong, maybe there's a mistake. What is it? What's his appeal? It's the majority, and the rhetorical, style of the left is going to favor the more ones who entrench and dig deeper into their I would say pathology, but
it's just moral narcissism rung amok, and it's leading to more fracturing and more craziness, which is interesting, I guess, just to see where things will go.
Even though I think these people are a minority, even within, say, the Democratic Party, they seem to have control over its narrative. You get very little people reacting. I can think of, for instance, like Barack Obama said a few things, like if you're in college, you need to grow up, or you don't need a safe space or something like that. You don't hear that very often. It mostly panders to the feels. Oh, that doesn't feel good, then that's bad. And so it'll be interesting to see how the left develops.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, you're getting like some weird situations. Like you have Keith Ellison, who is the person that they're touting as the new head of the DNC. I think he's a congressman from Minnesota. And the guy is basically a Muslim black nationalist. And what's funny is that he's super anti-Israel, but Bernie Sanders is supporting him. Yeah. So you see these weird contradictions.
Well, if you look at the map, right, the Democrats have they have the West Coast and the Northeast Coast, and whatever ideological,
New York, Massachusetts, and California.
Yeah, and the blue wall that went through the Midwest just got breached. It almost included everything but Illinois. I guess she took Minnesota, but it was razor close. And the thing is, those are very distinct areas that have, even if they have ideological affinity in some respects, it's hard to see them having a lot in common. What if we're talking about trade with China and the Northeast doesn't like it, but California does, or whatever? And if we're talking like the potential for sectarian violence or civil war or secession, like these aren't elements that would be cohesive together. They would have to be separate. Right?
I mean, I think the key to seeing what connects them is honestly just the racial element. I remember looking at a map of Michigan where they break down all the counties and how they voted, and
Wayne County. Trump
only won by 10,000 votes. But if you look at it by county, almost the entire state is red. It's just a few like areas surrounding Detroit.
Yeah.
So and in all of those other surrounding counties that went red, I mean, I'm sure that most of them are majority white. So you probably just had white voters mobilize and vote in a significant enough majority for Trump. And that's probably what happened. It's white working class voters without college degrees that brought him to victory.
Right. I love how they say white without college degrees, but they don't say, and then they kind of use that as like a diss, like, oh, his supporters are uneducated. But then
It's
they don't say, oh, well, our mainstay is black uneducated people,
yeah.
or Mexican uneducated people, and the inference being, of course, that white people with college degrees are the sophisticated ones who should run everything.
Well, it's funny because if you break down white subgroups, Trump, I think, won every subgroup of whites except for white college educated women. Like he won with college educated whites overall, but that's because his advantage among the men was so great that it more than made up for his disadvantage among the women. And he won with white women generally. So it's pretty weird. Like he took every subgroup of whites except for white college educated women and probably like gays or Jews or something like that.
Another thing that people have been saying for years is the demographics support the Democrats, and they're like, well, the Latinos have a higher population growth, and I don't know if blacks have a higher population growth or not, but and as they grow, they will push, they'll take over, and some people were commenting that it's almost given Democrats to be complacent, to just assume, like, look, we don't really have to try because in a couple of years or whenever, we'll have an unassailable majority in every state. And Steven Crowder was pointing out, like, yeah, that's assuming you get all of your minorities. Like, and see, Trump went up in his minority support relative to Romney. And it's like, you don't have to get all the Latinos. If you get almost all the whites and you get 15 or 20% of the Latinos, then you're going to win Florida. You know, and the thing is, the idea that the Democrats can hold nearly, over 90% of all these groups. Obama could do it with blacks because he was black, but Hillary didn't do that with blacks. And she didn't do that with Latinos either. For all the stuff about the wall, and it would be wrong to characterize him as being, more popular than she was among Latinos, but he got a higher percentage than Romney did, and that's enough.
like 30%, yeah. But I mean, the thing is too is whether the Democrats eventually do get that demographic advantage or not depends on what happens with immigration. Because all right, let's say he builds the wall and there's a complete moratorium on immigration. There's zero immigration. Among just whites, conservatives have higher birth rates than liberals. And so given enough time, because conservatives have more kids, you'll just see a lot more white conservatives than you see liberals.
Right.
And so even if minorities vote overwhelmingly Democrat and nothing changes, the majority that Republicans will have among whites would be so great that it wouldn't even matter. So literally the only thing that Republicans need to do to reverse the demographic advantage that Democrats seem to have going forward is to just stop immigration. And if they can hold on to that, those numbers will completely shift in their favor after about 40 years.
It seems like they're already enough in their favor, and I heard Bill Whittle say this. In the 8 years since Obama's been president, Republicans have taken 1,000 legislative seats at the state level across the country. Like the amount of Republican power at the state level has shifted 1,000 seats across the country in 8 years, which is
that's pretty amazing. Yeah,
that's astounding, and those. That doesn't seem like, well, that doesn't matter in national politics, but these are the people who will then they'll gerrymander the districts, they'll determine who can vote, who can't vote, like to a degree anyway. This is really significant, and a lot of these states that are traditionally blue in the presidential election, they have Republican governors, and Michigan's had lots of Republican governors. Despite it all. So, and the same is true with Ohio and Pennsylvania. And look, even Mitt Romney was the governor of Massachusetts, even though it's a blue state. Not that does them any good in the presidential election, but Uh, the shift, if anything, is the other way. Do we think that he's going to build a wall and stop immigration, though? I mean, for
I,
real?
I'm not. No, I don't think he's going to stop immigration. The most you could probably realistically expect from him is that he'll deport like 2 or 3 million illegals. He seems to be pretty serious about that, so that will probably happen. But more than that is not likely.
I mean,
Um,
even his election alone, because of his reputation, will probably have an effect. Or people deciding I'm not going to go or I'm going to leave. Um,
yeah, and it will also open the door for a future candidate who's more extreme on the immigration issue, which is why the alt right is so happy about him winning.
so even if he's not the white knight, he makes the white knight possible.
Yes.
Well, so that so we've talked about the left. I'm a little bit curious where we see his presidency going and the Republican Party going at this point. Uh, as surprising as this election was, I'm not sure if it demonstrates a new paradigm, so to speak. For the Republican Party is. I feel like it's more clear with the leftists. I feel like when I look at how they're developing, it makes more sense to me. When I look at the Republicans, I'm not sure what to say.
Well, the right always seems to define itself in opposition to the left. So it's always a more heterogeneous collection of interests and groups and so on. Um, as far as actual changes that Trump might inaugurate, the only things that I'm realistically holding out any hope for is that he'll be less aggressive as far as foreign policy goes. That seems fairly likely, assuming that neocons don't completely infest his foreign policy team, or that he's able to control them if they do. And again, he seems serious about the immigration issue, which I think is probably the real reason why the press has been saying all sorts of things about him. You know, he's Orange Hitler. He wants to send blacks to camps and gas Mexicans and all kinds of stupid nonsense. I think it's because of his views on the immigration issue. So he'll probably do that. And as far as that goes, he'll have an influence in that direction. But on most other things, he's a fairly typical Republican. He's, wants to cut taxes or says he does, wants to deregulate the economy or says he does, and that sort of thing. The only real differences I see are in the foreign policy area and in the immigration area and maybe the anti-PC area. So he might just kind of more blatantly appeal to implicit interests among white voters. That's really the trajectory that I see it going. That the Republican Party is going to become the party of white people. I mean, it already largely is because you already have majorities of whites voting Republican. But I think those will increase as time goes on. And the Democratic Party is just going to be the party of kill whitey. That's basically where I think we're headed.
But that calls into question how much of that is Trump, though, because Romney was a more white in terms of what he received in terms of the vote.
Well, just barely. 59% is
Uh,
against 58, but yeah.
um,
A lot of that probably has to do with the fact that the never Trump people, most of whom are white, probably just stayed home. So if they had voted for Trump, he probably would have broken 60. Uh, I mean, I
I don't
assume
know how
those
many of
people.
the number. I know there's never Trump people, but they all strike me as neocon think tank people. I don't know how many people there are like that in Oklahoma. You know what I'm saying? Or uh,
Yeah, no, yeah, probably not too many. I
uh,
mean, I can see a few of them, around the New York area, around Massachusetts, and so on. It wouldn't help him to win the state, but in terms of percentages, maybe it would have made a slight difference. I don't know. Um,
so we'll
yeah, but
see. He has an unprecedented. I mean, Bush had a clean sweep of the House and the Senate and the judiciary for a couple years in his at the start of his second term or the end of his first term. I don't remember. And that actually for me was a pretty important event because he had the House and the Senate and the executive, and he didn't repeal a single regulation or tax.
yeah,
And I remember listening. There was a cable broadcast guy that I would watch in my college town, and somebody called in to support Bush, and he described, he's got the majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, a majority on the court. That's called a clean sweep. That means he can pass stuff. Maybe not anything, right? If it's too contentious and enough people cross the aisles, but he can pass stuff and he can undo laws. And not only did he fail to do that, he didn't even try. Like it would be one thing if he'd said, "Okay, we're gonna, get rid of this tax or this law," and there was a big fight in the House and it ended up not happening. Okay, fair enough. At least he tried, but he didn't even try. And so for me, that was a kind of a watershed event to be like, look, this party that we just can't count on it to do any of the things that it rhetorically says that it's going to do, even when it's in a position to do so. So this is going to either reconfirm my cynicism or prove that at least in some circumstances something can be done. And I'd love to be proven wrong, preferably proven very wrong because he gets rid of a lot of taxes and undoes a lot of regulations. I think that's highly unlikely, but um, yeah. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think
Yeah,
he'll?
I mean, as of right now, my view is basically wait and see. I do expect something of a paradigm shift. I think his election does represent at least the beginning of that. But I could be wrong. So my view is, look, he's not in office yet. He won't be for a few months. We're just speculating when we talk about what it is that he may or may not do.
Yeah.
So I would say give him until, I don't know, like April or maybe even May, so that by the time he really has his hands on power, and if we don't see any purges by then, then I think it's safe to conclude that those who voted for him have been betrayed. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, at least for
We
now.
also have, unlike during the Bush years, we had Ron Paul in the Bush years, but he was literally alone. But we now have a small gaggle of Ron Paul Republicans in the legislature. We have a couple in the House with people like Amash and Thomas Massey, and you obviously have Rand in the Senate. And these people have been very vocal in they want to push their ideology. And for the instance, the talk of Michael Bolton being appointed, which, as far as I know, Trump wasn't actually suggesting. Other people were floating his name, but
Yeah,
Rand
yeah,
Paul is like this. I'm not going to confirm him. You know,
yeah, and good for him. Now, I don't think it's likely that Bolton will actually
no.
get any positions.
But
Uh,
the whole point though being that they're in there asserting that smaller government, repeal regulations idea. And I know Amash has said the same thing, that they want to get stuff cut, and they none of them have had a chance before. I mean, really. I mean, because of Obama, right? They had the House and the Senate, but they didn't have an executive who would sign on any of that stuff. Um, so hopefully that's a slight difference, but an important one compared to the early aughts when Bush had the same situation going for him.
Yeah, look, some of his cabinet appointments are like slightly encouraging. I mean, the most disappointing area for me is the foreign policy area because there are a lot of neocons trying to infest the place. And of course, he's looking at Mitt Romney for his Secretary of State, although I think that's becoming increasingly unlikely now that Kellyanne Conway, his campaign manager, basically came out against it. And good for her, by the way. I'm glad she did that. She might have tanked Romney's chances.
Yeah, you
Um,
say that until he appoints McCain.
oh God, oh God, that would be horrific. Uh, and I mean, I also kind of like what Rand Paul said about John Bolton, where he's like, look, it wouldn't make any sense at all for Trump to appoint someone like Bolton because Bolton's a neocon. This is such a war hawk that in the early 2000s, he had basically lied that Cuba was building weapons of mass destruction because he wanted to justify an American attack there. I mean, it's insane. So it would be really kind of incongruous and ridiculous for Trump to appoint someone like that. On the other hand, he seems to me to be the sort of guy who would not be hesitant to overrule his subordinates if he found them doing something that he didn't like. It's difficult to say to what extent he'd be willing to do that, though.
Yeah, do
Um,
we think of Trump as somebody who could be putty in the hands of a savvy, Washington establishment person? Uh,
my sense is no, but I could be wrong.
we've had presidents. I've heard a lot that Reagan was basically that. That Reagan was this very
Yeah,
popular governor, and he was this formerly famous actor anyway, but was great on television. Was very popular, and in '84, obviously had the biggest landslide ever. I think probably. Um,
Yeah.
and yet I've heard that he got to Washington with all his ideas, and they were like, no, this like. Apparently, he really thought that we should go back on the gold standard. Which, bear in mind, they had only officially left, what, 7 or 8 years before he came to office. Is when the Northwoods um, uh,
I think it was
Brett,
1972. So yeah,
yeah,
8 years.
yeah, August, whatever, and they basically were like, no, that's not how it works anymore, and he never made a peep about it. Um, and of course, he also might have been senile and had Alzheimer's. Although I guess Trump is older than Reagan was when he got elected, but he doesn't. I agree. He doesn't strike me as a guy who would be putty in the hands of these people. But who knows what they tell them? We don't know what they're
Yeah,
told.
yeah, because there's also, frankly, the problem that there are many things about which he simply is not knowledgeable, and so it really matters what advisors he has. He has good instincts, but there, at least in some areas, but there are many things that he doesn't know. Uh,
Which is true of all of them, right? We say Obama doesn't know economics, but they have a ready, there's a ready cadre of policy people in D.C. to impose the status quo and on any areas where you're ignorant, basically.
yeah, the neocons are already waiting in the wings, trying to worm their way into his administration.
So we can go to war with Russia after all. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully not. I think he banked so heavily on. I get along with Putin, and when I saw reaction in foreign countries, like Russia was the one foreign country that was happy um, about the outcome. People in the UK and whatever were like, "How is this? How is this possible?" Like, you know,
Yeah, because the same sort of liberal elite that runs things in the U.S. runs things in those countries.
at the
You
very
know?
least, the media,
Yeah,
uh, and it's such a and that I guess we haven't talked about them directly. This was a huge repudiation of the media. Uh,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
they pull out all the stops to elect Hillary, and people just we're past the days where Walter Cronkite could just tell people who to vote for, and they will. Um, Not that he's ever explicitly did that, but his influence was such, and I say his, but like the broadcast media was such that they had that power, and apparently they don't any longer.
Well, he was trusted. People like him in that day were considered trustworthy, and that simply isn't true anymore. That's what I said earlier, that the people in the media simply don't seem to realize that nobody gives a damn about them anymore. There are a significant segment of the population who simply does not care what the opinions of these talking heads are. So that if you really wanted to hurt somebody, the best thing you could do is endorse them. Uh, you know,
Uh, he at his rally, this was interesting. They obviously had a large press corps there, and he derided them. And he said, "Look, they always."
openly, yeah.
Yeah, and he even said, like, "Look, they always." He goes, "Whenever you see me on TV, they always just show me and the people behind me. They never turn the camera around and show that the stadium is full." And sure enough, that stadium was completely full. You know, like standing room only. Probably violating fire codes like crazy because there are just people in this. And when he says that and he points to them, he goes, "Go ahead, turn around, show all the people." They don't move their cameras, and now maybe they have rules that say they got to stay on him or whatever. But he was like daring them almost, and taunting them. And
Yeah,
now
some of the chants that people started at his rallies. I mean, there were people chanting "fuck CNN" a couple times. There were people chanting "tell the truth." Because I mean, it's true. You don't have to be some kind of hardcore Trump supporter to realize that the man was lied about to an extent that's absolutely ridiculous.
right, and,
You
and this
know,
goes to the Bill Maher point. There are legitimate things, serious things that we could say about Trump that are troubling, but when they lie about so much, you
yeah,
just be like, whatever, dude, you're full of shit.
yeah,
So when you say
yeah,
he's this dangerous guy who's like off the hinge, I don't believe you because you also said he's a racist because, whatever, or he's a
yeah,
rapist because whatever, because of locker room talk that every single person whoever lived
His,
does, you know.
yeah, and because a group of women who were probably paid by the Clintons and who have connections to them accused him of sexually assaulting them
Yeah,
20 years
they
ago.
they
You know?
canceled their lawsuits the day after the election.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if it didn't look like it was politically motivated before, it was then. And then, of course, there's the whole hypocrisy, like, oh, he treats women bad, so we have to elect Hillary Clinton. You
Who
know,
treats everyone that isn't Hillary Clinton bad.
yeah, and whose husband is the most famous or infamous philanderer rapist president that we've ever had, worse than JFK. You know, and who you could just, and if you could say, well, she was just the dutiful housewife who had no part in that, well, then you don't get to put First Lady on a resume. But they don't say that. They say she's an active part of his administration. She helped him, and we apparently you have the book, but I'll just apparently this is substantiated that she she ran the efforts to destroy the reputations of any woman who ever accused her husband of anything. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's true. She sent private investigators after Juanita Broderick and Kathleen Willey. I think one of them showed up at home one day and found like her cat or her dog was like dead. She'd sent someone to like kill her pets to like send a message to
she
her.
got off lucky.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, when the media is going to pounce on him and then just give her a blank check, you know, and you could say, well, how culpable is she? You know, not all. Well, it definitely looks bad. It definitely looks like hypocrisy.
WikiLeaks revealed blatant collusion. Donna Brazil, who worked for CNN at the time, gave debate questions to Hillary. John Podesta had been sending emails, and other Clinton staffers and aides had been sending emails to organizations like CNN saying, these are the questions we want you to ask. Don't ask these questions. Talk about this. Don't talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Wolf
And this,
Blitzer read questions verbatim that he was given, you know, and so one of the questions that they said, we want you to ask her, how do you feel as a woman, you know, considering what Trump said about women? You know, so they have their political narrative, and they just told CNN this is the narrative, and you're gonna and CNN was eager to, you know, nobody said, well,
yeah.
geez, listen, that's kind of violating the wall, you know, the
and,
ethical.
and journalists came out in some cases brazenly and said, look, it is our moral duty to do what we can to get Hillary Clinton elected. They completely forswore any pretense of objectivity and just said, no, we're going to go all in for Hillary. And they were wrong, and they've been completely discredited. And I think large numbers of people are saying, look, I'm tired of watching John Oliver repeat his ridiculous talking
Yeah.
points.
Oh my
And
goodness. And I usually like
yeah,
John Oliver, but it was so nauseating. Uh, the double standard, you know, I mean, he even made jokes that at one point he was reading off controversy surrounding Clinton, and he made a fake one up, you know, the Swiss fax error or whatever. And then he makes a joke about it and goes, "See, you believed it because you know." The implication being that all the controversies around her are just made up, you know, jokes that people just reflexively believe because they're biased against her. But there really isn't anything. Like there's no corruption in the Clinton Foundation. I guess Saudi Arabia really honestly shares their progressive, you know, vision for Africa, and that's why they gave her $20 million or whatever
yeah,
it
yeah,
was.
yeah,
We'll see.
and told her to like keep quiet about them building a nuke. And I guess the Qataris, well, their hand just slipped right as they were holding a pen over a check,
Well, when
and
you
some.
when you have billions of dollars, Ivan, it's easy to do that. You know, I mean, I worked in telemarketing, soliciting charities for soliciting money for fake charities, and well, essentially fake charities. And there were people who would just give everybody who called $50. Well, the Qataris are like that, except they give everyone who calls, you know,
$12 million.
$500 million. So don't read into that. It'll be interesting to see how many donations the Clinton Foundation gets next year.
I'm hearing that I've heard that donations are collapsing.
Yeah, well, no, I'm very curious about all the people who donated because she received vastly more donations than Trump did.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh, what are those people gonna? Oh, we want a refund? Like, you know, Goldman Sachs and all that. We paid you Saudis, I'm sure she's not going to get a big speaking fee to go to Riyadh anytime soon now. Um,
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's great. I mean, everyone has been repudiated, right?
yeah,
And
I don't know. I'm
it's it,
glad those
it,
assholes don't get what they're paying for. That they paid all this money and she doesn't get
yeah.
elected. And it's like, oh, and if anything, they made an enemy of the person who won. You know,
Speaking of giving away your money for something stupid and not getting anything out of it, have you heard what's going on with Jill Stein and her recount efforts? This is so stupid. She's trying to organize a recount in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan because she alleges that there might have been certain problems with voting machines and that they might have been hacked. Well, Pennsylvania basically refused her request and said, "You filed too late. We don't care." They're going to do a recount in Wisconsin, but everyone thinks Trump will win anyway. And Michigan doesn't even use voting machines, from what I understand. So I don't even know where they're getting the allegation from. But she basically found a way to raise like $6 million in less than a week over Thanksgiving weekend, no less.
yeah.
And
Well, there was
and it
leftover
looks
DNC money. Yeah. After they
yeah,
fired
and it looks
after they fired Bill Comey and or no, what's his name? Scott Fovel, they just took the money they were going to pay them and they gave her.
yeah, and it looks really suspicious when you go to her page where she's raising money. People have watched it, and they said that at all hours of the day, even ridiculously late at night, it rises steadily, like by about $160,000, and it's led people to suspect that someone super wealthy like a George Soros could just be using hackers and to funnel money to her pseudo anonymously, and then they could just be programming it to send the money in like set installments regularly, and that's why you have this weird pattern of it coming in regularly, including at like 4 in the morning.
I thought Stein had said that she favored Trump over Clinton, though.
Yeah, yeah, that's the other thing. She would correctly, I think, probably
Yeah, I think
perceive Hillary as being more.
for the same reasons you or I would have made that choice. It sounded like.
Yeah, yeah, that Hillary's more likely to start World War III. Now, it might be that she's trying to regain leftist street cred after having said that, or it might be that she's just embezzling the money that idiots donated to her.
That would be so fitting. So you don't think this? I mean, I think even if a recount were to happen and they were to find something, which seems to me extremely unlikely. Yeah, it's like officiated at this point. I don't
Well,
see.
it wouldn't make a difference at all at this point because, as I said, Pennsylvania rejected her request, and even if she's going to get a recount in Wisconsin. But even if that manages to turn things around and give the state to Hillary, Trump only loses 10 electoral votes, so he's still at 296 and he's still president. Even if he loses Michigan as well, that's 16. That puts him at 280 for president. It doesn't make a difference, right? So even if they find something, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, did you see that somebody post a friend of mine, again, my favorite friends who just love Hillary, they posted a picture a couple days after the election of her walking her dog in Yonkers or someplace along the Hudson in New York. And the post was from some woman who was like, I was just out, walking my baby, and guess who I found on this trail walking her dog? Hillary Clinton. And the article was like, isn't she a strong woman after that horrible defeat? Now she's just out. And my friend was like, oh, she's so inspiring. Um, I would just be, with the bottle this whole time. And then it turns out, this woman is a Democratic staffer. This whole thing is staged. Like,
Yeah.
the whole, some random woman didn't meet Hillary on the hiking trail, with her dog. And so then I was like, so what is she trying to do? Is she trying to rehabilitate her political career here? Like, is she thinking about it 4 years from now? Like when you,
I don't know, but it's so stupid. I mean, it's obvious that Empress Hillary does not actually mix with the plebs.
no,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that or if it's just Chelsea's going to run for Senate
in a few years and maybe try for the presidency in like 20 years.
Oh my God! After Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
So let's see. Is there anything else? Any other thoughts? Like it's just very hard for me to predict what Trump's going to do, and like you said, like it doesn't make sense. We'll have to just see how he governs. You know,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
he doesn't have a policy history that we can point to really. His rhetoric has been contradictory and kind of vague to a point. Some of it has been good, and but you know we'll see it, and he has the ability to translate some of that into action. But we'll see if that actually happens. Um, and then the other thing is just that the DNC and the left is just descending into, you know, a radical abyss of
Yeah,
non-reason, basically, which
and
is
and as, and as they do it, it's funny because they're going to empower the alt right. The more white people specifically that they alienate, the alt right is going to be waiting in the wings for those people.
I this is something that I've sensed for a while that you're going to have, especially with Obama, especially with Obama, because he, you know, the one thing about Hillary is she had this big political machine and she had the media, but she didn't have a grassroots movement of supporters really. She has
Well,
supporters. You know, there's the people at the cocktail parties at DC who think that she exercises smart power. Great, but they don't go and march, you know, or
yeah,
anything like that. Or we've got to get it out. Unlike, you know, Bernie had that, and Obama had that big time. And if you remember, like there were these really creepy videos of like school children in California singing about how Obama was the leader and how he's going to fix all the
yeah,
problems, or
yeah,
these black Muslim students marching, you know, that Barack Obama is the Alpha and the Omega. Did you see those?
yeah.
See those videos?
I have. Yeah,
And,
it's ridiculous.
and I remember thinking, like, dude, you know, who knows what's going to happen? But if we ever get to the point where these people, these delusional school children, or these militant black nationalists who are for some reason supporting Obama, who's totally not a black nationalist, um, if they ever start going door to door to implement some kind of policy, they're gonna die. You know, like, you know, if,
Yeah,
whether it's gun control or you know, universal, you know, service or whatever it is, there's a whole bunch of people who are so tied up to this and delusional that they, whatever it is, right? Whenever they get the order to do whatever, they're gonna go for it and not realize that the people out in the outside the cities aren't going to be okay with it. And they're not going to
yeah,
stand there and let you just come and be like, hey, we're confiscating this because of whatever, or we're forcing you to do this because of whatever. They're going to kill you.
yeah.
And
I mean, I think these people are stupid and that they're just going to keep poking the bear, basically.
yeah, but they're that's a good analogy, and they just think it's going to sleep there all the time. It's like, well, if it, you know, you poke it hard enough, you're going to find out it's actually a bear, you know, and by then it's too late. You just committed suicide. Because I don't see the left wingers for all of their Molotov cocktails and black masks and banners of having a chance in hell against the NRA pitchfork wielders of, you know, Middle America. You know,
Yeah,
not that I want it to come to that or anything, or that wouldn't be a terrible scenario, but I just I think they're so delusional though that they don't realize that.
yeah. It appears like a distinct possibility at this point.
And it's fly, you know, like having driven across the country again, you know, and I've done it now many, many times, and I've flown across the country, and I understand the idea of flyover country. And you have these people who they've never been to Nebraska. They've never been, I mean, they've been to the airport in Denver, but they've never really been to Colorado. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
going skiing in Vail
yeah.
does not mean you've
Yeah.
been to
All they know
Colorado.
about Colorado is South Park.
Yeah, or they go skiing at their to Vail, but they've never been to Michigan. They've never been to Ohio. They've never been to any of those places. They have no idea what it's like to live there. You know,
Yeah,
my Hillary fans in DC, they're very well traveled. They go to Iceland and they go to, you know, Split, or they go to Dubrovnik, but they don't go to you know, Omaha or Bismarck or Houston. And one of my friends in Ohio was posting like, unless you know what a mustard sandwich tastes like and have a favorite flavor of ramen, you don't know how it is to tell someone they've got to pay $1,200 a month for the bronze plans in Obamacare, you know? And I had several friends, and this is the other issue that we didn't really talk about, but I think it was important. I had several friends who are not political at all, who are looking at their Obamacare and going, "This is crazy. This is a second mortgage for something that I'm never going to own, with it still has a deductible that I can't pay."
Yeah, and there are health insurance companies that are just sort of saying, "Fuck this, we're out," and they're opting out of
Yeah,
it.
I'm still waiting. I mentioned this in the last video. I'm still waiting for people to come and apologize for telling me that Obamacare was great, you know, all those years ago.
Yeah,
I'm not holding my breath, but
yeah,
like so
yes,
the disconnect with these people in the cities though, where they can get caught up with this fervor, this ideological, rhetorical leftist tripe that they find convincing, but nobody else does. You know, when they are compelled for political reasons, if this ever happens, to go out and impose their ideology on the rest of the country, they're going to find out that they're very, very delusional.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I've lived most of my life in New York City, so I've met my fair share of people like this, including people in my own family. I have SJW family members, people who are like, especially like a few years younger than I am, who are still in college. And I mean, someone I knew who will go nameless recently, just over Thanksgiving, I was talking to this person, and they're like, if it wasn't for the damn Rust Belt, we wouldn't have a sexual predator in the White House right now. And I'm thinking to myself, look, a week before the election, you did not know what the Rust Belt was. If
Right?
I said that term to you, you would not know what I was referring to. The only thing you know about Michigan is that there's a city there called Detroit. That's it. And now they're pretending that they understand what
Yeah.
happened and that they understand the people and that it must be because of racism, and they have this profound insight into who they really are and what it's like to be there. And it's complete bullshit and like self-deception. That's what I mean. They're doubling down. The left is doubling down on their insanity.
Even though they have the wiser members among them who are telling them, "Hey," even fucking Dave Chappelle. You see, I mean, his stuff that he said about it, and he's apparently lives in Ohio, and his comedy sketch was pretty funny. He in his sketch he was watching the results with all these liberal friends, and when Trump wins, they're like, "Oh my God, this is literally the worst thing that's ever happened in America." And Chappelle and his black buddy just crack, or Chris Rock just starts to laugh. He's like, "Oh, this is the worst thing." He goes, "They're like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to minorities in American history." He just starts to crack up. But that's the way they talk. That's the way they talk,
Yeah,
And like I said, these New York people, these DC people, these California people. I guarantee they've never been to the Rust Belt. Never.
yeah.
They've never been to Cleveland. They don't know what it looks like. Never been to Columbus or Detroit or Grand Rapids or Indianapolis or any of these cities, and they've never been to Appalachia either, even though it's only.
And they don't. And they don't want to go. If you offered to take them, they wouldn't. They're just like, ew, why do
Oh,
I
no.
want to sit around
Well,
with,
yeah,
with
I'm sure
what's-
you've seen the posts where people say, "Don't go to these states," and it's all the states that didn't vote for Hillary. It's like you're not safe if you go there. And of course, if they looked at the crime
Yeah.
statistics, they'd see it's if anything, it's a negative correlation. Um, I'm like, wow, I don't know. I go there all the time. I've never had a problem. It's
Yeah.
it's the cloud. They're feeding into the perception that they're ivory tower, disconnected, ideologues, and they're feeding into that because it's true. Like
Yeah,
un, it's being too generous to say that's just a perception at this point. For the overwhelming majority of them, it's absolutely true.
it's ridiculous because it's reached religious proportions now. It's that Brahmin townie split, and these people hate each other and it doesn't seem like they'll be reconciled to each other.
What could
Because,
possibly reconcile them? Well, okay,
Right.
I do know something, but it would be bad. It would be like some kind of horrible war. like a 9/11 event or a Pearl Harbor, and like, oh, okay, yeah, we can all get along at least for the duration of this. And of course, no one wants that because that's a negative
Yeah.
on so many levels. I don't see anything else though that, oh yeah, let's all come together.
If this keeps getting worse and building, and it is, because you do get the sense that something is coming to a boil here. If this keeps going, we'll either have secession and breaking off, which I completely support. Fuck off,
Yeah.
California. Like,
Oh, but do you think,
like,
who would never allow California to leave? The Democrats.
well, yeah, because
I
that's
mean,
55 electoral
yeah,
votes.
they can't win without it, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that they should be able to leave, but I just don't see that as
Yeah, I mean, it's either secession or war.
eventually, or
Yeah.
dysfunctional dissolution,
Yeah.
or practical
Yeah.
dissolution. I think that's the least bad of the potential, ways this goes. I think this is of course ignoring, like what if the world gets destroyed by an asteroid or the singularity or whatever. But like, assuming human society continues to develop in some semblance of the way that it has, yeah, that's how I don't see another way. Um,
Yeah. Another interesting thing, Millennial was another youth, but he's gone to America and he's taking a tour through different states. And the first couple of days he spent in California. And he was basically staying with subscribers of his in California. And there were a lot of people saying to him over and over in the comments, like, get out of California. You haven't seen the actual America yet.
yeah,
Go into the Midwest. And he eventually did. And he went to a gun range and fired a gun for the first time. Like, there's good videos over there. But yeah, he actually like legitimately explored the real America, which is something a lot of people don't do and don't really care
yeah.
to do,
I've
especially.
I've read Brian
Mhm.
Kaplan write things like, when Europeans visit America, they visit the parts of America that are the very most like Europe. They go to New York City, they go to DC, they go to California, and those places, although yes, they are definitely part of America. They're very unusual places. New York City is
Yeah,
not a typical place. It's it's
yeah,
it's untypical in almost every important way, and to base your impression of the society, the broader. I mean, you can base your impression of New York society on going there, sure, of course, but to extrapolate that and be like, oh yeah, I understand people in Iowa now. No, you fucking don't. Like,
well, I mean, New York City really has nothing in common with like upstate New York and like Buffalo. I mean,
no, no.
you go, you go.
I have friends in Syracuse, and they're like, what the, like they feel like they're under the totalitarian boot of an electoral, behemoth that they can't control. You know,
Yeah, because New York is basically a red state with New York City attached to it.
yeah. Well, that's how everyone feels outside the coasts. You know,
Yeah.
all those millions of people in the West and the Midwest and the South. The only big state that's red is Texas, and but
And it may not be that way for long,
well, they
because
keep
Texas,
yeah, they're bearing the brunt of the Latino thing, but I, I don't think it
well,
was.
Texas actually looks exactly the same demographically as California. It's just that whites vote a lot more, and that's why it's still red.
Because Texas whites are not leftists and California whites
Yeah,
are. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
but people, the people in the flyover country are tired of the sanctimonious electoral power of the coasts. And people who have never been to their states, who have the gall to tell them how to live, or whether they should have coal or not. Like the areas I was working in Wyoming, it's all coal is the only thing there, right? I mean, they don't make enough money having people hunt elk to pay for anything. It,
yeah.
it's coal, and the thing is, their coal is what's powering everything, right? Like, not everything, but these liberals in California who criticize are hypocrites because their iPods are being charged with coal power, and so
Well, they don't know anything about the industries that make their pampered lives possible, and
No,
don't seem to be interested in learning about them.
they
I
don't need.
mean,
They
this
know
is
everything already, so they don't need to learn.
well, yeah.
They went to
This
college.
is
Ivan, they went to college. They know these things.
yeah,
They have a
yeah,
liberal arts degree in women's studies, so they know exactly how their iPod is made, and they know exactly what it's like to live in Gillette,
yeah.
Wyoming, or Fort Collins, Colorado, or Minot. They know all about all that because they've seen Dances with Wolves, and they watch MSNBC, and Rachel Maddow told them that everyone there is racist. And they read an article on Slate that said that the only reason you don't like Hillary Clinton is because she doesn't have a dick.
God, I'm so glad I'm out of college. It's like I got out of there just in the nick of time.
They started raising tuition 14% a year my last year, and I was like, "Yep, just in time."
Yeah,
Well, that's the other place where we have the media and then we have academia, which is the two of the main pillars of leftism, and yet they're becoming increasingly. It feeds into their own authority, their own status. Like, look, we're right because of who we are, and then that just kind of.
well,
But then
well,
you have
that's another thing. What's going to happen to a city like LA now when all the media elites and the Hollywood elites that are centered over there, through all their weight behind Hillary, have been completely repudiated? Uh, what are they going to do? Because the only thing LA really produces is entertainment. Okay, at least a city like New York has, it's a financial center, so they've got something else. But with LA in particular, it's like, what are they going to do? Like the rest of the country just shat on them collectively.
well, they're gonna. I mean, the ones who feel strongly, and LA has. They're all about perception too, and I do think there's a lot of actors who are just coached to not say things because like it's bad for your image. There's a lot of gay actors who aren't gay because look, you're more popular if women like you. Um,
Yeah.
and it's been safe to attack white people, Trump. The politically correct bigotry has been okay, and I think for the ones who are really upset, they're gonna just amp that up, and that's how we get like when Pence goes to a thing and they just give him a speech about whatever. Um, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if we see stuff like that from a few of them. I think a lot are gonna just okay, he's the president now, just live with it. Or we might get a movie about this though, and it's all about how he's like
Yeah.
he's,
Yeah.
and but those aren't always bad. When HBO made the movie about Sarah Palin, like it actually wasn't that negative about her, um, in a lot of funny ways. So they might. I think some of them are going to kowtow, and some of them are going to double down. You know.
Yeah, and it also depends on which one. So, like Robert De Niro came out and made
Oh,
some
he's a
kind of,
punk. He's an asshole. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's a punk. Now, like Robert De Niro, he still has a career because he's actually a good actor.
And he's
But like
Robert De Niro. Yeah.
Yeah, but like Rachel Maddow, whose entire career and existence is bound up with this punditry crap. I mean, what's going to happen to her? I mean, like I've said this before, but like Alex Jones has a bigger audience
Yeah.
than these people
That's
now.
another very interesting thing. I've been watching Alex Jones now for over 10 years. And again, at this point, it's mostly for entertainment. He has some good stuff in there. He can give good rants, but there's so much bullshit in that punch bowl that it's like you got to drink it really carefully. Um,
Yeah.
but he's fucking mainstream. Like
Yes.
he isn't the secret conspiracy theorist that you whisper about that you downloaded on torrent or whatever in your college dorm room. He's fucking mainstream, and as much as I find him ridiculous, I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think
No,
that's
look,
very good.
you have to drink the InfoWars punch bowl carefully, but he's still more credible than CNN to
We
my mind.
think about this. Think about this for a second. We have come to the point where now he is fully in support of the administration.
Yeah,
Can
that's
you,
something
can you imagine that?
we were talking about the sauce earlier. I know him on Facebook. I'm Facebook friends with him, and he writes It's going to be fun watching Alex Jones defend the state for the next 4 years.
Yeah, or the contra, that to watch the leftists oppose the state, and a lot of libertarians who are old hat at this have been saying, okay, welcome back to being anti-government. It's been 8 years, or the anti-war movement. Maybe it will exist again, beyond antiwar.com. And
Yeah, but everyone who understands the left, I think, should be able to realize that the majority of this anti-statism that we're going to see is not going to be made in good faith.
it's all partisan.
It's going to be
Completely
yeah.
partisan. He's a dictator if he does it, but if our guys in there, if Hillary were to do it, all the
Yeah.
better. More power to her. So there's somebody, I think it was Mark Dice, was posting videos of pundits, and there's some of Chris Matthews where they're like, well, it looks like he's going to take Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Yeah, and he's like,
that's
oh God, ain't that a bitch?
He goes, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. He goes, Jesus Christ.
No, I think what he actually said is like, oh man, ain't that a bitch? Like, just like under his voice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, his video titled that Rachel Maddow was crying. I don't know that she actually was crying, but she was clearly distressed in the extreme.
Yeah, reptilians don't cry.
Yeah, confirmed. Well, I think it's a combination of both. They don't like Trump and they're sad he's winning, but also like, Jesus, we did everything in our power to stop this, and it's happening anyway. And it's almost
Well,
like their own, their own impotence is kind of just being demonstrated right there. They're reporting their own impotence in a lot of ways.
Yeah, their own egos have been deflated. They have realized that a significant chunk of the country simply doesn't give a shit about them.
Well,
They don't value their opinions.
I think the echo chamber of social media is allowing this. And the echo chamber is bad for a lot of reasons, but it can reinforce some. So if you were alone, in the world, so to speak, and you didn't know anyone else, and everything you got was from television, it's hard to imagine that you would have voted for Trump. But if you can log into your Facebook page every day and see, oh, look at this new Podesta email, look at this, 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 every single day.
That's probably one of the main reasons why Alex Jones is mainstream now.
It's true, and of course, the echo chamber, this bifurcation through social media is exacerbating the fracturing that you talk about. It's making so now, but on the other hand, maybe it's because I'm a libertarian, but I have friends in both, so I was getting a ton from both sides, a ton, and I still do. I still get Trump is evil, and I no one's of course posting stuff about getting Hillary elected, but that perspective. I don't know how much other people have both. And of course there's the whole unfriending thing, or they just tune you out. Like, they may not unfriend you. I know people who are like, I'm not, and I don't post anymore, but like, if I were, they would just be like, oh, Dave's a libertarian. Of course he's going to say, that we shouldn't go to war in Syria. What does he know?
Yeah. I mean, there are left-wing people on my Facebook feed that I deliberately don't post on and don't antagonize, because I know that if I do, they'll unfriend me. Everyone who has unfriended me has been a leftist, and a lot of people have reported similar experiences.
Yeah, that's the same. I mean, I had it going back to Obama. When he got elected, and I was like, yeah, this is not good. And people are like, you're racist, and they offended me. And I'm like, what? I've known you for 20 years. Like, that I'm not racist, but whatever. And then that person never got to see my posts ever again. Not that I post very much, but I'm sure I highly doubt that person's a Trump supporter right now, though. I wouldn't know, because they're not Facebook friends anymore. But But it seems like you can't. It's very hard to quote unquote convert people in that situation. But I guess the left is at a disadvantage there because they're so.
The left I think the left is basically all powerful in terms of its influence on the culture, and now that it's damaged itself so much, the only thing to really do is kind of wait for it to destroy itself, because the social justice warrior wing of the left will just alienate everybody else. We see that happening. That's what's going to happen. It's not going to be so much that the right will defeat the left, so much as that the left will cripple itself and the right will swoop in.
I've heard it said the left eats itself, and they're not eating themselves right now, but we're going to get to a point where, well, maybe a little bit. The Bernie and the Hillary, and then before that, even the Hillary Obama split. Which apparently they kept covered up, but was quite significant. Um, yeah, I do see it's like you're going to have the radicals who are just out of control, and then the adults, so to speak, are unwilling or unable to rebuke them or rein them in and be like, hey, just calm down. You don't need to throw a tantrum because
And
of
then
a
there are some of the
gorilla.
more moderate people on the left who are going to increasingly be de facto pushed to the right, but they don't want to say that they're on the right because they consider themselves on the left. People like
Right.
Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah.
So these people are going to be left up shit creek without a paddle. Uh, there's going to be absolutely no one around them,
There is
because
there is a vestigial, Bill of Rights kind of leftist. There are people who are like, yeah, you should have free speech and you should have, and maybe they're bad on the Second Amendment, but they believe in some classical liberalism, not as much as you or me, but some.
yeah,
And the new left rejects all of that. Like
that
there's no
yeah
part of
that
the Bill of
amount
Rights.
of
There's no part of the Bill of Rights that SJWs think is okay.
Yeah, look, you're also going to see conflicts between various factions on the left. Have you heard some of these newfangled social justice theories about rape? Some of them are saying now that it's actually impossible for white women to be raped because rape is really, quote unquote, really, forcing sex on someone plus power. And since white women are white and supposedly wield social power, they therefore cannot be raped.
Well, no, I think I told you before. I have the same guy who I went to see the Trump rally with. He was basically shacking with and fucking this girl who was a SJW, and she was we had we went on a hike together, and we having this discussion, and it was civil in the sense we didn't shout, but she made it explicit that she did not think it was possible for her as a woman to consent to sex because the horniness that she had biologically and the culture of the patriarchic culture had just given her sexual urges, and so even if she says explicitly and signs a waiver that says I'm in favor of this, I was deterministically, and this is probably kind of true, but like deterministically made to do that, and as a result, nothing I can do is consent. And I looked at my friend, I was like, you cannot have sex with this girl because she's saying right now that anytime you have sex, it's rape. That she didn't consent, and that and we also know that she's totally okay with, and sure enough, not to my friend, but one of their other friends that she slept with, she accused him of rape. And
Yeah.
fortunately, she had there was too much counter evidence that the cops just threw it out. But I'm like, geez, you can't. I know you're horny. I get it. And she was a good-looking girl, but like, you can't, dude. It's your life. And so she's alienated now, and not from him, from everybody that they know, and everybody that they know who wasn't necessarily, who might have been sympathetic to the left, knows that SJW people are out of control. Cry wolf, and rape Nazis.
Yeah.
And those people are more likely to vote for Trump than they otherwise would because of her actions, ironically enough.
Well, here's the interesting thing about a lot of these like far left uh, SJW kind of women. Uh, there are a lot of women just in general who will do this thing with a man where they deliberately try to like mess with him and push his buttons just to see what they can get away with. And they will keep doing that until the guy finally gets pissed off and like puts his foot down, because what they're looking for is a projection of authority and like a display of strength, but they're not sort of self-aware enough to explicitly request that, so they do it in this kind of indirect way. And feminism, to me, especially now with these ridiculous social justice warrior things, appears that way. It's almost like I'm going to act as batshit insane as possible until some guy steps in and just says, all right, enough, fuck this shit, and takes control. I really think that that's the psychological dynamic going
Yeah,
on.
well, that was I've heard that many times, and obviously I'm not, engaging with women ever, so I don't have firsthand experience, but that was the case with her. She wanted to be dominated. Like the sexual things that they were into was her getting bound, her getting treated rough, him doing masculine things, and the complete opposite of the rhetoric.
Yeah,
The complete
yeah,
opposite.
it doesn't surprise me at all. And I have to say, I mean, these people probably live like really fractured, disconnected psychological lives because you have this like explicit conscious ideology that they're promulgating on the one hand, and then you have all this stuff that's going on subconsciously.
Yeah,
And
they'll fight the power, fight the man, but then in bed they want to be a fucking slave. And I
well,
haven't seen that with
because
girls. I've seen that with guys, though. Holy cow! And I think I've told those
well,
stories before too. But like guys who are seriously, total SJW, total fight the patriarchy, fight the cis male privilege, blah blah blah. But then you pin them up against a wall, and they get on their knees, and they just say, "Tell me what to do." And they want to be degraded. It's like holy crap. Like, how do you reconcile? Okay, it's just for fun or whatever, but no, it's not. Like those desires are deep seated in your mind. You didn't just watch a porno and become that way, like
yeah, yeah. Look, even among gay couples, you have the one who's the man and the one who's the woman, quote unquote. Like they fall into archetypes almost despite themselves. This has to be something biological or natural or primordial at the core of it. So it does happen. I do think a lot of this like fight the power shit is just a woman saying, like stop me from being crazy.
or atoning for the guilt of the urges that her pussy gives her. Like
Well, yeah, yeah,
I,
that's the other thing.
and
And,
because I've also noticed the gay guys who are uh, don't have racial preference. They'll say like you can't have a preference in your sexual partners if you say this is one who's explicit, and he taught sociology at Harvard no less. He said you can't if your profile says that you are only into white guys, don't fucking talk to me. You're racist. That's unacceptable. He goes, unless of course you're black, you can have racial preferences then. Um, but of course, who does he hit up? Me, with my blue eyes and my white skin. And who does he? Oh, you're so blah blah blah. And then of course he's like, don't say you're against femmes. That's wrong. But then he's like, oh my god, your chest hair and your beard, and like just zeroing in on every masculine feature that I have, and when I met him, I was like, listen, like, I don't agree. I have racial preferences when it comes to my sexual partners. And not only do I have them, I think it's okay to have them. And that it's not, I mean, you could say it's racist
well,
in some sense, but not in any kind of pejorative sense, and
most people do have preferences like that, at
everybody,
least
well,
in
this is the
politics.
thing, it's a lie, dude. This guy totally had preferences. He had 100%
Yeah,
preferences for white dudes. He could tell himself, "Oh no, no, I'm equal, blah blah blah," but he doesn't get erect. He doesn't send messages. He
yeah,
doesn't,
yeah.
"Oh God, I want to meet you." I'm like, "Oh my God, look at your eyes." Like he doesn't do that for black dudes. He does that for white dudes. He did that for me. And I'm like, okay, and don't feel bad about your preferences, and don't be a fucking hypocrite about it to everybody else.
You even see this for God's sake in the porn industry. Like there are like porn stars who will say, "I will not do a scene with like black people." Not probably not to as high a percentage of them as would probably be seen, sexually among the general population.
No, they have
But hot,
financial incentives that are, changing that too a little bit, but among gay people it's extremely common. You do obviously have people who like more than one and like everybody and whatever. That definitely happens, but it's a large majority who have at least a preference.
yeah,
And
no,
they're even comfortable saying it. But then you do have this social justice minority like, nope, you can't have that. Don't have a preference. But then they do too, and
yeah,
like, and it's obvious they do. Why is he? Like, I mean, this guy lived in Boston's 45 minutes away. Like, dude, there's plenty of black dudes you could talk to. You don't have to talk to me. You know. Uh,
yeah.
uh,
And it's weird because they say on the one hand you can't have a preference, but that undermines their own ability to have the kind of person that they like to, be with. And it's just completely just a mess of contradictions and ridiculousness.
But the thing is,
It's
everyone
like,
else recognizes that.
yeah,
When a gay guy says you can't have racial preferences, but he clearly does, or a girl says she can't consent to sex, but she's clearly a hoe. Like, no offense, I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. This girl, look, I haven't known many, if any, girls who were as promiscuous as this woman was, um, based on what I was told and what she admitted. And maybe I don't know enough of a sample to have that mean very much, but there it is. And the thing is, they don't recognize it, but everyone else does, and will just be like, look, you're just full of shit. So when you tell me I can't vote for Trump because he's a racist, you know what? That's just another bullshit piece of garbage that you spout out of your fucking worthless whore mouth. No offense.
yeah. I think it just comes down to just simple narcissism. You know, it would be fatal to their image of themselves to be reflective to the
Oh,
extent that they'd have to be.
the
And so
social
that,
the social posturing is so nauseating, and
yeah,
I'm surprised we haven't talked about that, but that is one of the most repellent features of leftism is the hypocritical grandstanding, not actually doing things, not actually being charitable, not actually caring about the poor, not actually caring about black people, necessarily, but just I want to broadcast my Brahmin virtue
yeah,
to everybody, and that's good enough. If I vote for
yeah,
her, if I have a I'm with her bumper sticker, that means I care about the poor and minorities, and I'm not an Islamophobe, even though she's going to kill Muslims by the thousands, by her own admission. That doesn't matter.
uh,
It looks good.
yeah. It's like I love black people so much, and I live in a 95+% white neighborhood and don't want to move. It's that kind of cognitive
Yeah,
dissonance.
I don't want my kids going to that school. They have to go to Groton,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I had some friends, some Jewish friends in high school, and all liberal, blah blah blah. But, their kids went to a private, college, liberal arts college in the middle of Ohio, which probably had like a 4% minority student, body, and happily, or even, my friends in DC, I've visited them, and yeah, DC is mostly black, but you don't see them at the grotto where they live, you know, and when they go to Iceland or wherever else, like it, it it goes back to the whole. They think it's the white educated people who need to like control everything, and it. They don't talk about the uneducated blacks and the uneducated Mexicans, but that's they because any Mexicans or blacks who like don't vote for them, then they like, oh, you're traitors, you're horrible,
yeah. You're
you're
not you're not
you're
really black.
you're Uncle
You're an
Tom,
Uncle.
you're Uncle
Yeah.
Tom, or you're not really gay if you're Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel not is no longer gay because he supports Trump. Oh, so I very amusing election overall.
the, the, the ultra religious conservatives have found their cure for gayness, apparently.
Mike Pence. Well, that was the other thing is the evangelical thing doesn't seem to really be a powerful political force at this
Oh,
point.
this is an interesting thing. The guy who wrote this book, it's called The End of White Christian America. I want to read it at some point. I can't remember his name. It's Robert something. But he recently wrote an article for Time magazine in which he points out that 81% of evangelicals voted for Trump. And this is despite the fact that he's not exactly a pious man and that he has a moral history that a lot of these people would be expected to object to. And yet they voted for him in droves, where just 10 years ago they wouldn't possibly have done so. And I think the reason for it is just that the evangelicals understand that their backs are against the wall. The left controls the bureaucracy and the administrative state. They're able to impose these kind of affirmative action style mandates on them so that every time a black, albino, transgendered, wheelchair bound, other kin midget walks into their store and feels aggrieved, they can find them or put them out of business, and they're essentially eroding the social fabric of their communities. And they've just gotten desperate, and they said, you know what, we don't care.
Yeah,
We're just going to vote for this.
Stephen
We're just going to
Crowder.
vote.
Stephen
Yeah, what,
Crowder. Stephen Crowder had a incisive rant on election night, basically to that effect. He's like, "Look, these people are not racist. They just don't want a 40-year-old man taking a dump next to their 6-year-old daughter." You know,
yeah,
and if that's your issue, that like, you're gonna pick a presidential candidate because she supports that, and she's gonna force that on people, then you're crazy. And to think that if you don't understand why people would react against it, and now of course, like how many times would that really happen? Not very often, but it's the principle. You're going to say in principle that we have to force this, because look, those people, that's that's terrifying to them, and it should. Why
yeah.
shouldn't it be? Like, what rational person wouldn't find that terrifying?
Right, because the general principle is that their way of life is to be slashed and burned, their communities are to be eroded, and everything that they've grown accustomed to or that they like is to be slowly withered away and abolished because it's allegedly reactionary or racist or something.
The left will use the
And
state as a weapon in the culture war against them. It will bludgeon them mercilessly as
yeah,
class enemies, and they explicitly. So why, if even if
yeah,
Trump's not a Christian, if he's saying I'm not going to do that, and there's no evidence that he is going to do that, you don't have a choice.
yeah, the evangelicals are going to be pragmatic and say, look, he's not exactly one of us, but he won't go after us. So, as a matter of survival, they vote for him.
Well, if that leads to them becoming secular non-interventionists in the culture war, then that's all to the good. Uh, I'm sure they would
Well,
leap on. If they had the chance, if they had a whatever, a Santorum or a Cruz or somebody who was better, I'm sure they would prefer that to
yeah,
Trump. And not that I care. Like, I'm not like, oh, we got to have Trump or nobody else. Just as long as they're preventing fucking socialists from going, or well, I don't know if you can say Hillary's a socialist, but you know, I still feel like she's by far the worst of the two. I'm very happy that you know
yes.
uh, whatever he might do to disappoint me. And of course, there's an outlying chance that it could be something major and terrible. But those are less likely than other
Yeah, I
things.
mean
Uh,
yeah, I mean the evangelicals would definitely prefer Santorum or Huckabee, but Trump is their best option, and he's not going to attack them in the way that the typical leftist would do. So they've just kind of pragmatically made their choice because they see everything around them collapsing. Their way of life is being flushed away.
and then, of course, what's the
Um,
slogan? Make America Great Again, which you can then
yeah,
impute whatever that is, whatever that means to you.
yeah,
And I mean, so it's a very good, vapid, motto to go on for your campaign. Just like change, or yeah, make it stronger together doesn't really make sense to me. Um, there's a whole other level of this, of not just the leftism in general, but her campaign and how it was not run very well, and how she wasn't going to all these states. Of course, that might have been because she has major medical problems that we still don't really know about. Um,
that could be,
I
yeah.
like I mean, I
But I
heard.
mean, even if she didn't, again, Empress Hillary does not mix with the plebs.
Well, that's what
So
Crowder said that too. He's like, okay, she lost Wisconsin. She never went there after the
yeah,
primary. She never went there. And you're like, what is your point, Hillary? That like they should all just vote for you and you don't have to bother. Like that works in Alaska, that works in Hawaii, that works in California. It doesn't work, you know, in these other states. And Jesus, you have a plane. You could have gone there. Trump went everywhere, you know. And I think well, didn't she only visited like 2 or 3 places the last 4 or 5 days, and he visited like 7 places a day for a week or something.
yeah.
To me, that sounds like that she had something wrong with her. I feel like that is just, or they were complacent and they assumed she was going to win and they didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, David Seaman got the reporter for the Huffington Post. He got fired because he wrote an article about Hillary's health. The Paul Joseph Watson video asking questions about her medical state got something like 3 million views. And he's like, hey, maybe we should talk about this. And he asked like very reasonable questions. And a couple days later, he wakes up and he gets an email and it's like, poof, you're fired.
Yeah.
And now he's making videos about Pizzagate, which are really good.
Yeah, there were a couple like that who had all their stuff erased, who would then make videos about how they're not suicidal. You know, like I'm
Yeah.
happy and like this has never happened before. I've written 4,000 articles for HuffPost, and you know I write one where like maybe we should see your medical records, and it's like boom, and I think they might have just thought they were going to win. You know, if you notice in the last couple of days, her rhetoric shifted a little bit to I'm going to be the president for all Americans. You know, I want to. She was becoming conciliatory, you know, to her rivals. You know, as it turned out, rather prematurely.
Yeah.
And so they clearly thought she was going to win. Uh, and then she blamed. I guess when she had her, I wish we had a video of it, but that election night, there very recently a video surfaced from earlier, like around 8, where they thought they were going to win, and they're like, the polls are great, we're going to win. She meets Bill, and they're all giddy, and they're shaking hands and everything. And within an hour of that completely shattered. And apparently she was drunk off her ass and was screaming and yelling at everybody and
Yeah.
blamed Obama, Comey, and maybe who was it, Podesta or somebody else. And that it was unprecedented for her not to concede that night.
Well, she was too drunk to
Yeah,
concede,
that's why I
probably.
can, that's what lends credence to these reports that I heard, to in my mind anyway, because it's totally unprecedented to not, you know, come out and concede and just send your chief of staff to tell the party, hey, go home, it's over. Um, and then yeah, I guess she had to be drugged up like big time to make her appearance the next day. Oh, so happy. Oh,
Yeah.
well, anything else?
Yeah. Yeah, I just hope Chelsea doesn't get elected to anything when she runs.
Well, she lives in New York, so you'll be the first to know, right? She'll be senator or governor.
God damn it.
How do the people of New York feel that they're basically like the batter cage for, you know, the batting cage for, or the bullpen for lousy Democratic candidates? You
Well,
know,
you know,
where was
it's
Bill before? He was Arkansas. You know, where's Obama? Illinois. No, we're gonna get a New York elite person because that's definitely gonna win in Ohio and Minnesota. Maybe that's what will change, and we'll get you know, a blue collar Democrat, a Howard Dean, or a, God forbid, Bernie Sanders. Not that he's really blue collar, but
yeah.
we'll see. They have a lot of soul searching to do, and they're probably not up to the task of doing it, I don't think. Uh,
No.
so, all right, cool. Well, we'll have to do this before the next election, like I said last time. But
And get the video to work
get the
properly.
video to
Yeah.
work. Yeah, we'll talk about something other than politics next time, though. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
probably enough
yeah.
for a while.
What the hell is with this off-air crap? I mean, I have to figure this out because it's bothering me. This should
Yeah,
have been working.
yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know why it wouldn't work from the last time, but whatever.
I'll figure it out.
That sounds like a plan because then I don't have to worry about it. All right. Now wait
All
a second.
right.
Do I even know how to turn it off though? That's the good question.
You just end the call.
Uh, are we even on? Okay, I'm gonna hang up. It was a good time.
If we weren't on all this time.
No, we were getting. I was watching. We were getting comments, that were even
Okay.
like repeating quotes that I had said. So people were clearly listening and they could hear you. In fact, I think you got new subscribers because people asked who you were. So you know,
Oh, cool.
people could hear us. A couple times people posted that, hey, did the stream go away? And then they're like, oh nope, it's back. So it might have been spotty, but it mostly went up. So it did actually go through, but no video.
Yeah, all right. Well, it worked well enough, I suppose. But yeah, I'll figure out this video thing.
Sounds good, man. I will talk to you later.
It may be something to do with your camera. That's my speculation. But yeah, talk to you later.
Yep. Bye bye.
Bye bye.